In an unprecedented midnight vote within the inner chambers of the Crown's private council, Prince Edward moved decisively, stripping Prince Andrew of his remaining state benefits. The news broke like a thunderclap. No warning. No second chances. Just cold, final judgment. But what forced Edward's hand? And why now, after years of quiet exile? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The corridors of power rarely echo at night, but on this occasion, they did. Edward had summoned a select group of senior royal insiders, an elite circle bound not by tradition, but by urgency. There were no public invitations, no palace aides leaking sources close to the matter. This was a meeting forged in silence and sealed with intent. Andrew was not informed. He was not invited. He was not warned. And by the time he heard the news, it was already too late. Every remaining privilege, from ceremonial duties to his last line of state-funded security, revoked. The leaked documents that followed would send the monarchy into freefall. In one excerpt, Edward described Andrew as a long-standing reputational threat to the institution, a man who refused accountability and underestimated the nation's capacity to remember. That statement alone would trigger a media firestorm. Overnight, broadcasters flooded with analysts, former palace officials, and royal watchers dissecting not just the vote but the deep fracture it revealed. This wasn't about scandal anymore. It was about punishment. And it came from within. Andrew's remaining benefits had long been a source of public unease. His state-subsidized security, his royal lodge accommodations, his continued access to ceremonial events, it had all been tolerated in the name of familial decorum. But behind palace walls, resentment festered. Edward, once the quietest of the Queen's children, had endured years of being sidelined while the family scrambled to contain Andrew's mess. And now, he had acted. Not out of spite, but out of cold, calculated necessity. Within hours, public opinion split like a cracked mirror. Some hailed Edward as a modernizer, finally doing what others were too afraid to. Others saw it as cruel, humiliating, a betrayal of brotherly duty. Hashtags erupted across social platforms. Number Edward the Executor. Number No More Andrew. And in the heart of it all, Buckingham Palace stood silent. No statement, no photographs, no press release. But silence in the royal family does not mean peace, it means panic. And inside those gilded halls, tension was reaching a fever pitch. But this moment of reckoning was not born in isolation. Its roots stretched deep into betrayal, broken promises, and a brotherhood shattered from within. They were once inseparable, two brothers forged in royal duty, bound by blood and boundless privilege. But beneath the surface, a slow war had been brewing. Jealousy, disgust, fear. And in the silence between them, something quietly snapped. In the early years, Edward and Andrew moved like shadows of one another, living in the gleam of their mother's reign. Under Queen Elizabeth II, duty was doctrine, and appearances were everything. The brothers were expected to fall in line, to serve, to smile, and for a time, they did. But Andrew was always louder, flashier, reckless in ways Edward could never afford to be. Where Edward sought stability, Andrew chased power, and the public, hungry for scandal, devoured it. For years, Edward's efforts, his diligence, his loyalty, were overshadowed by Andrew's implosions. Every time he built something, Andrew's name dragged it back down. Resentment, once unspoken, grew sharper behind closed doors. Edward watched as Andrew's scandals consumed the family's reputation. Affairs, lawsuits, global shame. Edward was forced into damage control roles he never asked for. Time and again, he had to step in, smooth over, hold the line, not because he wanted to, but because someone had to. And every time he did, it chipped away at something vital. Their brotherhood, their bond, their history. They clashed in private over inheritance, over titles, over what they each believed they were owed. Andrew still saw himself as the second son of the Queen, the man who once walked tall in military regalia, the Duke with influence. Edward, on the other hand, had grown tired of waiting, of being overlooked, of playing diplomat in a house full of burning bridges. It began with Andrew asking when he might return to active duty. It ended with Edward, red-faced and shaking, telling him he had become a liability to everything our mother built. That moment changed everything. Edward didn't yell again. He didn't argue. Instead, he began to document every outburst, every breach of protocol, every whisper from staff who feared being associated with Andrew's name. It wasn't revenge, it was preparation. He knew the monarchy would face a reckoning, and when it came, he intended to be ready. He started what some insiders now call a record of infractions, a quiet collection of missteps and misconduct, intended for one purpose: leverage. But Andrew, locked in his own delusions of redemption, believed this was all temporary. That exile was not an end, just an intermission. That one day, he'd walk back into public life as if nothing had changed. He was wrong, because while Edward plotted in silence, Andrew believed his exile was temporary and was preparing a bold return to royal relevance. Behind the scenes, Andrew was quietly building a redemption campaign. Strategic media lunches, calls to friendly editors, and confidential meetings with lawyers. He wasn't waiting to be welcomed back. He was preparing to force the crown's hand. It began in whispers, like all carefully manufactured returns do. A former aide was spotted having lunch with a senior tabloid editor. Then came the subtle headlines: Prince Andrew reflects, a life rewritten, second chances for a royal outcast. These weren't accidents. They were trial balloons, floated to gauge public reaction. Behind closed doors, Andrew had brought in a team PR tacticians with direct ties to Fleet Street and lawyers skilled in reputational recovery. They weren't trying to erase the past. They were trying to reframe it, spin disgrace into resilience, turn exile into enlightenment. Andrew knew that time softened public memory, and he was ready to exploit every second of it. But it didn't stop there. Beneath the surface, Andrew was sowing seeds of influence: quiet dinners with old military contacts, discreet conversations with minor royals still loyal to the past. He leaned heavily into the charity sector, reaching out to veteran organizations, promising his full support and a renewed sense of purpose. There were rumors of speeches being drafted, engagements being discussed. He wasn't asking to return, he was creating the conditions that would make denying his return seem cruel. Calculated. Political. Edward noticed. He always did. And this time, he didn't wait. Behind the palace gates, Edward began pushing back. He made private calls to those same editors. He reminded them, off record, of what still remained buried: allegations, testimonies, connections, never made public. He spoke to family members, advisors, even security officials. He warned of what a return would look like, not to Andrew's reputation, but to the monarchy's. The crown could not afford another gamble. Not now, not with the public watching every step. Then came the briefing. My5 had allegedly prepared a confidential report detailing the ongoing reputational risks associated with Andrew's efforts, not just past scandals, but current associations. People he had reconnected with, names that raised alarms. Edward received it first. He didn't hesitate. He delivered it directly to the Royal Council. It was damning. And with that, the wheels were set in motion not just to stop Andrew's campaign, but to dismantle it entirely. Andrew never saw it coming. While he was preparing his image for a comeback, Edward had prepared a case for his complete removal. And just as Andrew took his first steps back into the public eye, Edward made his move, pulling the rug out from under him. 12 seats. One decision. In a secretive, rarely invoked royal council, Prince Edward led a dramatic internal vote, one that would redefine the monarchy's rules on loyalty, disgrace, and consequence. The gathering was called under strict silence. No public record, no formal announcement. Deep within the royal institution exists an elite, seldom activated mechanism known as the private sovereign circle, a closed-door council reserved for emergencies, controversies, and existential threats to the crown. It had not been convened in decades. But on that cold, shadowy evening, Edward made sure every seat was filled. All but one. Prince William was notably absent, reportedly informed but not invited. It was a deliberate choice, one that would fuel whispers for weeks. Those who were present included Princess Anne, 2 key legal advisors, 3 senior courtiers, and a handful of trusted figures from the monarch's private household. The discussion was not diplomatic, it was surgical. Edward began by presenting a dossier. Thick, unforgiving, a damning archive of Andrew's actions, associations, attempts at rehabilitation, and the potential blowback of allowing him any continued link to royal privilege. Edward's tone, according to one source, was clinical, not angry, not vindictive, just resolute. He laid out the optics, the risks, the moral cost, and then he asked the council to do what no one else had dared draw the line. Debate erupted. Some questioned whether this would set a dangerous precedent. Others feared public backlash or the appearance of fratricide. There were raised voices, heated words about loyalty, about the late Queen's wishes, about how far a royal sibling should be punished before it became cruelty. But Edward didn't back down. He reminded them that the monarchy was not just a family, it was a symbol. And symbols, once cracked, do not easily recover. He argued that silence had failed, that compassion had been weaponized, that it was time to protect the crown, even if it meant sacrificing the blood behind it. When the vote was finally cast, it was clear. 9 in favor, 3 abstentions, no objections. The motion passed without a single opposing hand. Within 24 hours, the documents were signed. Prince Andrew's remaining state benefits were revoked in full. No guards, no royal lodging allowance, no official appearances. The order was irreversible, effective immediately. A quiet courier delivered the notice to Andrew's estate just after dawn. For Edward, it was not a victory. It was an inevitability. But what he didn't anticipate was the ripple effect, because the vote didn't just end Andrew's entitlements, it exposed a deep fracture inside the monarchy itself. He wasn't in the room, but he felt the impact. Prince William, furious at being excluded from the vote, stormed into a private meeting with Edward. What followed was a clash not just of brothers, but of future and present. For William, the exclusion wasn't just a breach of protocol, it was personal. He had stood by in silence, measured and restrained, as the institution navigated Andrew's scandals and fallout. He had trusted that decisions of this magnitude would be handled collectively through a united front. But Edward had moved unilaterally, using the shadows of secrecy to push through a punishment that would forever stain the family's internal fabric. When William confronted him, he wasn't seeking an apology, he was demanding answers. "You acted like a shadow king," he allegedly snapped, "as if the rest of us don't matter." And Edward, calm but unyielding, replied with ice. The air between them fractured. The room, once a space for private strategy, became a battlefield of ideology. William argued for cohesion, for unity, for preserving the monarchy's delicate image. He reminded Edward that every decision made without full consensus risked implosion, but Edward countered with the one thing that trumped idealism: results. He pointed to public polls, to whispers from within Parliament, to the mounting unease of the people. Silence has become complicity, and you can't lead from behind a curtain. Catherine, ever the calming force, stepped in, later urging William to let the moment pass without escalation. But even she could see it. The monarchy wasn't just changing, it was splitting. And the fracture wasn't generational, it was strategic. One brother was playing for preservation, the other was playing for survival. And both believed they were right. Behind palace walls, staff whispered of the confrontation. Some said William left, visibly shaken. Others claimed Edward showed no remorse. What mattered wasn't who raised their voice, it was that they weren't speaking the same language anymore. Fear began to creep into the upper levels of royal communications. The idea of two heirs, a present and a future, publicly at odds over the fate of a disgraced prince was a nightmare scenario. Leaks became inevitable. Advisors worried that even a hint of civil war within the firm would undo decades of image repair. But by then, the damage had been done. The press didn't need quotes. The silence itself was deafening, and worse, it was timed. Because while the House of Windsor imploded from within, Andrew was about to make a desperate move, one that would shock even his harshest critics. Cornered, humiliated, and stripped of everything, Andrew made his threat. If the crown wouldn't protect him, he would destroy what it cherished most, its secrets. The fallout from Edward's vote had barely settled when the next shock hit the palace like a wrecking ball. Word began to circulate, first in whispers, then in urgent calls, that Prince Andrew had reached out to a major publishing house with an explosive offer. He wasn't planning to fade into obscurity. He was planning to publish. The working title was said to be chilling in its clarity. The Spare Nobody Wanted. It was more than a memoir. It was a declaration of war. Andrew knew where the bodies were buried. And now, with nothing left to lose, he was ready to dig them up. According to one source, the manuscript would contain never-before-revealed details of private royal conversations, backroom crisis meetings, and allegations of cover-ups stretching back decades. The pitch? A raw, unfiltered look at how the monarchy protected its own until it didn't. He framed himself not as a disgraced royal, but as a scapegoat. The fall guy for sins far greater than his own. And the publishing house, aware of the controversy such a book would ignite, was reportedly all ears. Within days, a formal legal notice reached Edward's office. It was vague but threatening, a preemptive strike. It warned that any interference with Andrew's right to speak would be considered censorship. But it was never about rights, it was about consequences. The royal family had survived scandal, rebellion, even abdication, but it had never faced an insider threatening to weaponize its private history as a bargaining chip. Panic set in fast. Lawyers were mobilized. Confidentiality clauses revisited. Charles, already weary from the split between his sons and the fallout from the vote, was now under immense pressure to intervene. Not as monarch, but as father. Andrew had made it personal. And now, the risk wasn't just reputational, it was constitutional. An exposé from within the House of Windsor would send shockwaves through the Commonwealth, Parliament, and beyond. One insider was quoted saying, "He wants to burn the place down on his way out." And that didn't feel like exaggeration. It felt like prophecy. Palace aides scrambled to assess the damage. Was this just a bluff, a final, desperate grasp for leverage? Or had Andrew truly crossed the line into full defiance? No one could say for certain. What they did know, however, was that the timing was not accidental. Andrew had waited for the family to turn on itself. He had waited for weakness. And now, with Edward and William at odds, the press circling, and Charles hesitating, he had struck. But as Andrew lit the match, another unexpected figure emerged, to douse the flames with a warning no one dared ignore. She's been called the monarchy's iron spine, and for good reason. Princess Anne confronted Andrew in private. And what she told him was both a threat and a lifeline. It wasn't announced. It wasn't scheduled. There was no palace memo or security shift. Anne simply walked into Andrew's estate, alone. No aides, no formality. Just one royal to another. For years, their relationship had been strained, bristling with rivalry, judgment, and sharp-edged silences. But beneath that tension lay a shared understanding of what the crown cost and who was expected to carry its weight. Anne, ever the disciplined one, had watched Andrew's descent with silent fury. But now, silence was no longer an option. The stakes were too high, and Andrew had gone too far. The meeting lasted just under an hour. No transcripts, no recordings, but those close to Andrew say he emerged, visibly shaken. And what little leaked from that conversation was enough to send ripples through the palace. She told him, plainly, that if he moved forward with the book, if he dared turn family disgrace into public spectacle, she would not stand by. She would denounce him, publicly, irrevocably. She would not protect him, and if necessary, she would testify against him. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. From the one Royal Andrew feared, not because she shouted, but because she never flinched. But then came the unexpected pivot. Anne, in her cold but composed fashion, extended a final out, a royal escape clause. She told Andrew to disappear quietly, to retreat from public life once and for all, and to keep what little dignity he still had intact. No memoir, no press, no redemption arc, just silence. And in exchange, the family would protect what little remained of his image in the history books. It was the last deal he would ever be offered, and he knew it. The aftermath spoke louder than any press release. Within 48 hours, Andrew's representatives cancelled meetings with two major publishing executives. The book pitch was pulled. Conversations went dark. The firestorm began to cool. For the first time in weeks, palace officials exhaled. A temporary peace had been restored, not by diplomacy, not by Charles, not by Edward, but by Anne, quietly, ruthlessly, effectively. She left the estate the same way she arrived, alone, without a statement, without a trace. But everyone within the royal household knew what had happened. And more importantly, they knew what didn't happen. There would be no book. Not yet. And for now, the monarchy would survive one more self-inflicted wound. But dignity, it seems, was already in short supply, and as Edward stepped forward to address the public, the world waited to hear his justification. Standing before a divided nation, Prince Edward finally broke his silence. His voice was calm, but the message was clear. The monarchy would no longer protect its own at the cost of its integrity. The address wasn't live. It was pre-recorded. Every word, every pause, carefully measured, controlled, yet charged with meaning. There was no pomp, no backdrop of grandeur. Just a man standing not only as a prince, but as a steward of an institution fighting for relevance in an era that no longer tolerates silence. Edward didn't say Andrew's name once. He didn't have to. His words carved around the truth with surgical precision, aimed at something larger than a single man. "There comes a moment," he said, "when preserving tradition requires more than ceremony, it demands responsibility." And in that line, the tone was set. This was not a defense. This was a reckoning. He spoke of change, of the weight of difficult choices made, not in anger, but in necessity. He acknowledged the pain, the disruption. He said he understood the public confusion, even the disappointment. Families are complicated, he admitted. Ours is no exception. But when trust is broken, it must be addressed, not hidden behind lineage. For the first time, the public heard a royal voice echo their frustration, not dismiss it. But not everyone saw it as noble. Some called the speech cold, surgical, calculated. They said Edward had crossed a line, that he had traded family for optics, brotherhood for branding. He never raised his voice. He didn't weep. He didn't beg for understanding. He simply stated that the monarchy had reached a threshold, and crossing it meant shedding the parts that could no longer bear the scrutiny of a modern world. The part about Andrew came hidden in a single line. There are those who, in their roles, failed to uphold the trust placed in them by the public. A sentence that landed like a thunderclap, not accusatory, but unflinching. A reminder that titles are not shields. Not anymore. He ended not with a call to unity, but with a quiet challenge. That the monarchy's future would be determined not by who wore the crown, but by whether the people still believed in what it stood for. And then he stepped away from the podium. No questions, no clarifications, no elaboration. Just a final, lingering silence that said everything he didn't. And in the silence that followed, a new question echoed through the nation. What kind of monarchy would be left standing after this purge? With Andrew exiled and Edward ascendant, the monarchy now stands at a crossroads. But beneath the polished surface, whispers of rebellion, regret, and revenge continue to fester. The old order has fallen. What comes next may be even more dangerous. In the aftermath of Edward's unprecedented purge, Andrew vanished from the public eye, retreating to a private estate shrouded in silence. He no longer speaks to the press. He no longer appears at family events. His name has become a shadow, a reminder of how far a royal can fall when the institution turns its back. And yet, in his silence, a quiet tension lingers. No apologies, no reconciliation, just absence. But absence in the royal family is rarely without meaning, especially when power has changed hands. Inside the palace, a brittle civility now defines the relationship between Prince Edward and Prince William. They appear together when protocol demands it: ribbon cuttings, commemorations, funerals. But the warmth is gone, their exchanges brief, their eyes guarded. Edward, once the quiet stabilizer, now stands as a man transformed by decisive action. William, the heir to the throne, watches with caution. Not because he disagrees with every choice, but because the way it was done shattered something sacred. Unity, trust, family. The public is divided. Some hail Edward as the monarch. The institution needs resolute, unafraid, willing to do what others wouldn't. Others call him a traitor to his bloodline, a man who crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Online debates rage daily. Has the monarchy finally embraced reform, or merely rebranded its ruthlessness? And what of King Charles? His silence, once seen as wisdom, now reads as something else. Complicity, hesitation, or a quiet strategy still unfolding in the shadows. Only one figure moves between the fractured pieces with grace: Princess Anne. The iron-willed royal, who once stood silently in the background, now acts as the monarchy's unseen bridge. She mediates. She listens, she advises, but never intervenes publicly. Her loyalty, like her presence, is constant. And in a family where loyalty is currency, Anne has never been bankrupt. The final image is chilling in its quiet power. The royal family standing on the steps of a cathedral, smiling for the cameras, perfectly positioned, impeccably dressed. And yet, behind every fixed smile is a different truth. William's hesitation, Edward's resolve, Anne's fatigue, Charles's distance, and Andrew's ghost, lingering in the silence. A family that once ruled through image now survives through illusion. But illusions crack, and behind them, secrets wait. Because in the House of Windsor, endings are never final, and behind every crown lies a secret still waiting to be exposed. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.